Hello and welcome back to this week's GAA coverage. Joined once again by Conor McKenna. We're going to start off with Gaelic football content and no surprises. That we'll be starting off with one of the big surprises that we've seen this year, and I'm not talking about Antrim getting beat. We're going to Munster, and we just spoke about it offline, and we were saying that. Cork and Kerry. It was one of those games where, we were basically like 3 or 4 seconds away from it just being filed under, never watch it again, never talk about it again. And then all of a sudden it ended with the big kick in, the catch, the goal. Like what do you say about that?
Yeah, it was super stuff, Gerry, wasn't it? Like both sides really. I suppose the finish was super stuff. The game itself was absolutely horrendous. It was like there was teams where I don't know. I just think that, like, I just say Kerry would be wondering how on earth they didn't win that match. Like they played good hurling or good football even for a lot of the game. Do you know, just Cork just took them towards the end, but like Kerry just couldn't actually score. Like they had everything there and they were trying to hold the ball. Do you know what? I think they probably tried to complicate things too much, and they might have been looking at this plan for taking on Dublin in the latter stages, and I think they might have forgotten. Look, I'm not suggesting that they would have paid Cork any disrespect or anything, but I think they were maybe looking at a style that was going to suit them later in the championship against Dublin. And I think that they probably, like, the level they were at was when they were probably beating Cork and teams in Munster. They were going for 8 Munster titles in a row. And I just don't know how, from a Kerry perspective, they didn't win the game. Like, if you said to me on Thursday Cork would only score 10 points, I would have thought Kerry would have won easily. They only scored 10 points in the normal time, do you know? And I just don't know. I don't know what you think, Jerry, but I don't know how Kerry didn't win that game. And I suppose they couldn't actually put them away. They were 2 points up for a lot of it, and then Cork got it down to 1 point, and then it looked like Cork maybe was it a soft enough free maybe for Sean Powell at the end there, maybe. But I think, Jerry, that Cork absolutely deserved to win on the day with how the game panned out.
I thought it was quite interesting, like, just watching, obviously, like, what we will talk about, obviously, is the end of that game. It's what everyone, will be on talking about it for years to come, certainly in Cork. But I thought, like, whenever I was watching it, it was like the guy got, like, he ran in through, and it looked like there was an easy score to take at the penalties, and he played a ball out kind of wide, and it looked like a narrow angle, and you're thinking, like, why did they not shoot? And the clock's just creeping closer and closer to time up. And you're just thinking, like, why did they not shoot? They've literally just blown this, and then I don't know, it happened. Like, it was unbelievable. Obviously, now the guy that scored the goal, I know there's a wee bit of talk about him because he's a professional athlete, so to speak. He's got a bit of, he's been at Collingwood, I believe, in the Aussie rules, and he's come over. He's got permission to play for Cork this. I was going to say this summer, but obviously we're at autumn winter championship this year. What do you know about him? What do you know? Like, is he? I think I seen last night he's only maybe played 1 or 2 games in the AFL. So what do you make of him?
Well, I think he's a rookie player, Gerry. So I believe for Collingwood. But what I will say, like, is that I think he's got a huge potential. Well, if you look at the players that have gone out there to Australia and succeed, especially those lads that have made appearances, they're all of a very, very high standard of footballer, and that's the one common denominator they all have, especially those lads that actually do break onto the team. So I think that, like, he was a massive loss to Cork, and I think what happened was he kind of came home 6 weeks ago and he did the 2-week isolation period, and I think he asked Ronan McCarthy could he play for Cork, and McCarthy, there was a deal done between the Australians and Cork that he could play, and it was great to see Collingwood wishing him well, because I don't know, has there been that great of a relationship over the years, because players are coming home during the off season all the time, and I think that if it's more than they couldn't get Mark O'Connor to play for Kerry, he couldn't get permission last year to play that game, and I think Tipperary or Hope are doing the same with Colin O'Riordan at the moment, actually, because they're hoping to get him to play for the Munster final if he can, but I don't think that the club in Australia are allowing him to play. So it was a great piece of business by Cork to get him in. But I just think yesterday, if you looked at the difference between this Cork team and the Cork teams was the Cork bench yesterday was very, very strong. And, like, Luke Connolly was the best player. I don't know, was he injured in the warm-up, but he didn't play from the start anyway. And Luke Connolly came in, had a great game, and Killian O'Hanlon was very good in midfield. Ian Maguire got on a lot of balls inside. Brian Hurley was very, very strong. Like, I just think the Cork now, Like they really did look like for once that Cork are coming out. And the next challenge for Cork, Gerry, is, well, I suppose obviously it's to win a Munster Championship, and they really would like to win that. But I was going to say for future years it would be to continue maybe beating Kerry, or at least being very, very close to beating them, because maybe 16 and 17 and 18 in particular in the championship, Kerry absolutely humiliated Cork. Well, they didn't even play them in 16 actually, sorry, but 17 and 18, 2017, 2018, Kerry absolutely were miles ahead of Cork. And then last year it was a 3-point game. But the challenge for Cork now is to make sure that we're not coming back here next year in 3 or 4 years time and saying that, like, oh, Kerry, that was a real, like, they only got a last minute goal to beat them, and that was a real flash in the pan, and Kerry are still the dominant force. So I've always said there are footballers in Cork, and I think yesterday Cork, they had their matchups right in defence. Like, David Clifford was picked up by a player who mightn't have been expected to be able to handle him, but he proved absolutely everyone wrong. He had a great game on Clifford, the Cork fullback, and like the Cork defence, they got their matchups right. I think the thing, Kerry had been doing very well against Donegal and Monaghan in the league with the runners from deep, and those Cork forwards were tracking the runners then as well. So Cork didn't really let Kerry play football, and but Kerry missed a lot of routine stuff that you would have definitely have expected them to score. And I just think, Gerry, it was really one of those days for Kerry. But going back in that, they seem to play a lot. They were very, very focused on game plans, and I don't know what you think, Gerry, but I just think that sometimes you can get too bogged down by these tactics and these game plans in Gaelic football, and like they're kind of designed to set teams up to push them onto the next level, and often they do the opposite. They end up complicating things, and like I just don't know. If you look at that Kerry team, it's a serious bunch of players. Like, and there's so much talent there, and maybe I don't know if they need to be if they need to complicate it so much. Like Cork seemed to have far more of a work rate, far more of a goal. It was a much simpler game plan from a Cork perspective, and I suppose it paid dividends at the end. But no, the way it happened towards the end, I just think that Kerry, they weren't really engaged. They were kind of setting up not to concede a score, and no Cork player looked like shooting. It was reminiscent of the old days. I remember, I think it was around 2011 or maybe 2009, one of those years watching Munster and Northampton, and it was 42 phases before Ronan O'Gara got the ball in a drop goal over the bar, and Munster won by 2. But I was thinking, O'Gara is a Cork man. Imagine if they had him out there. It was nearly like that, though. It was like watching a rugby match. The ball was constantly being recycled backwards, and they were just waiting for the right man to shoot, and then no one was really willing to shoot. But then the ball dropped in, and I actually remember just watching the game at home, say that Mark Keane hasn't had much of an impact just in the lead and in the impact. They must be rusty, and then he really just caught the ball. It was a real AFL style catch and finished net, and it was just the most unbelievable Roy of the Rovers finish, really, Gerry. Like, it was really just like smash and grab. They're 1 point down. It's to get a goal and win. There's no penalties, no messing. Then that happened. The high ball came in. Cork got the goal and Kerry are out of the championship. And just one more thing I will say before we move on to other matches is how on earth everyone isn't a big fan of this knockout format. I don't know. It's so much better. There's no second chances, no messing. It leads to much more intense games. I put it this way, Gerry. If the matches weren't straight knockout, I'd find it hard to get excited for them without a crowd. But the fact that they're straight knockout means that the intensity that's not there in the crowd, it's compensated for in the pitch by how much that's stake.
No, I agree. Like, certainly just the intensity of games, and like there was just yesterday, like it was just like one of those moments where like it was like time stood still, and you're kind of like you're looking at the clock thinking, are Kerry going to get a chance? And like they didn't even really seem to get the kick out again, and players were on onto the pitch and it was over. But certainly really dramatic, and as you say, the knockout format it's in one way, you have a bad day, I'm sorry, but you're right. It's unlucky. It's unfortunate. Certainly, even going back to last week, Monaghan would be another team, who probably, will look at it and say, we had our one chance and we blew it. And certainly Kerry, like everybody had them penciled in as the team that could stop the Dubs, and it didn't work out. Obviously that game was, the one that everybody will be talking about this weekend, but there was another certainly exciting and interesting game in the Munster Championship. Limerick looked like they had the game won. Tipperary scored a great free at the end of normal time and went on to win the game in extra time. So it was Limerick 2-11 and Tipperary 1-15. Did you catch any of that game?
I just saw the end of it, Gerry. I just had the extra time. I saw all of extra time and Sweeney scored at the end. But just go back and what we were saying, one more point about the other match is that Monaghan, you mentioned Monaghan there, and Monaghan was another team who complicated things in the second half and tried to play possession. it actually ended up backfiring completely. Like, I just think you can get so bogged down by these tactics, and it's a very, very simple game, Gaelic football. Do you know, like, I just wouldn't be as into that as other people in this whole game plan and this, I'd say, rubbish about trying to be smart, and you end up actually doing the opposite. But just one more thing going back in Kerry, and you mentioned there people saying how they were going to beat Dublin, and people always get bogged down when Jim Gavin used to say, "Oh, we're focused on the next game, one game behind the process." I think that's the most boring gibberish. And do you know what, Gerry? It's actually the most probably truthful bit. It's so boringly accurate, if you know what I'm saying. Like, this whole thing about the process and one game at a time. And I just thought maybe Kerry, they were obviously, now I'm not suggesting they were looking past Cork, but they seemed to be taught. I bet you the whole narrative was, we're going to win All Ireland this year. We're going to win All Ireland. You know, and it mightn't have been maybe the same as, we play simple, we'll get over Cork, and then maybe I suppose it's easy to be wise after the event. But I just think sometimes you can lose a game like by complicating things and by looking ahead. And well, if you start looking ahead, you might that's when teams get caught. And like Kerry, they've won 8 Munsters in a row, or 7 months in a row. Now it's not going to be 8. But going back at that Tip and Limerick game, I only saw the end of it, Gerry. But Conor Sweeney, I turned and watched a point to get extra time. Like, he couldn't have asked for any better, and it was just the most perfect shot. It went in the inside of the post, and I have to say I was absolutely heartbroken for Limerick. I was at the end of the match. They looked like they could have had a penalty there denied. But I suppose, Gerry, if you look at it from Limerick's perspective, this year, okay, they entered the McGrath Cup, and like, we're just going back to last year, maybe at the start, they bet Tipperary in the championship, and then they got a well-beaten off Cork. But they had beaten Tip, which was a huge step forward for Limerick. This year in the league, they won Division 4. That was absolutely vital for them to get out of Division 4, it was, you know. And like, then they won the McGrath Cup as well. Now, having watched the match this time in real time, I was thinking Limerick losing by a point might have been a blessing in disguise, because I might have thought they would have been playing Kerry in a Munster final, and they might have got a big enough beating, and then it might have put back a lot of the progress they had this year. And I just maybe might have thought that Tipperary were more experienced, and they hadn't won the league. So I think it was probably more important for them to get to a Munster final this year. But the way it transpired, Gerry, is that Tip actually now are in a Munster final with a very, very good chance of winning it, I'm going to say. I think that it wouldn't be a surprise at all if they bet Cork. But just going back with Limerick, I think he said to Billy Lee, he's a very, very decent man who puts an awful lot of time into Limerick football, a real Limerick football man. If he said to him at the start of the year, Billy, you're going to win Division 4, you're going to beat Waterford by 11 points in Dungarvan, and you're going to lose by a point after a good performance in a Munster semi-final, I'd say, while he won't say it publicly, I'd say he would have taken it, to be honest. Do you know?
Okay. So what we'll do then is we'll go up to the Connacht Championship. Galway, obviously, they've managed to get straight into the final with Judah Sligo. So the only game then was Roscommon and Mayo. In the end, it probably wasn't as close as many predicted. Mayo ended up winning at 116 and 13 points. And there was one thing that interested me in watching it. Actually came after the Cork and Kerry game, and it was watching, I think it was RTE. I know definitely Cooper was there, Coach Cooper was there. But watching all the different games, different channels, there's so many different pundits. Yeah, so they were him and whoever the other analyst was, were kind of like, as soon as the Kerry game was out, they started talking up Mayo, and the woman who was presenting, she made a fantastic point. Like, she just straight away she says, once the Mayo game was over and once Mayo beat Roscommon, you basically spent the whole time saying why they can't, win the All Ireland, and now that Kerry's gone, it's like you're trying to talk up somebody else. So what do you think of that? And obviously the game itself, which Mayo won quite comfortably.
But just going back, Gerry, to one more point I make about Tipperary and Cork in the Munster final is that Bloody Sunday happened in Croke Park on November 21st, 1920, and Tipperary and Cork, there was the same weekend and the Tipperary were playing Dublin that day, and obviously they had their Tipperary player Michael Hogan was shot dead in a GAA match in Croke Park. But the 21st of November this year is a Sunday now, it's a Saturday even, and the Munster final is scheduled for that weekend. So it's 100 years on, and they're actually wearing a Bloody Sunday commemoration jersey, Tipperary are, that day against Cork. And I suppose Cork, it's very significant for them to be playing as well, because obviously they're the rebel county, but Terence McSweeney even died on hunger strike 100 years ago, like, as well. So it's really, that's a very, very interesting subplot to that Munster final, is the historical significance. But yeah, Mayo Roscommon, I watched that match. I was a bit disappointed by the match, to be honest, Gerry. I think that Mayo, in the first half especially, they were very, very professional. They got the job done very, very quick. And they got on to the next round. I think that they probably killed the game off. They had a small bit of a wind at halftime, and they kind of killed off the game. And I think at halftime, Roscommon were probably they needed a few scores here to get on, and that didn't really transpire. The opposite transpired. So the game was very, very much over as a contest. But people are giving out with Mayo saying they were sloppy a bit, but I think James Horner will secretly be delighted because they haven't been to a Connacht final in 5 years, and they're back there now. And I think that's really what they wanted. But I think that Mayo play an awful lot better when Cillian O'Connor plays. He's a super footballer, O'Connor. He's a top scorer ever in championship history. He probably doesn't get enough credit for that stat alone, but Mayo are a different team with O'Connor playing, and they really look like they're back to their best. And I suppose one of Cork, Tipperary, Galway, or Mayo are going to get to an All-Ireland final now, so that really adds up. And now Mayo have been in plenty of All-Ireland finals recently, but Galway haven't been there since 2001. I don't remember the last time Tipperary were in there. They were in the semi-final in 2016. Cork haven't been in there since 2010. So for Galway, Cork, or Tipperary, getting to an All-Ireland final in any year would be an absolutely huge progress and huge achievement. Now for Mayo, they haven't been there in 3 years. So while it would mark progress to get back to a final, they'd have no interest in going up there to make up the numbers. So, but I think, Gerry, though, just probably to leave before we move on to their matches, out of those four I mentioned, Mayo are probably the strongest on paper. And I'd say Mayo at the moment, James Horner, now he's rightly going to say he's focusing on the Connacht final alone, but I'd say they really do have a chance to get into a final now, an All-Ireland final.
I think just let me say about Mayo, and they've no interest in making up the numbers. I think it's at any stage, an All-Ireland final is for winning, and even more so with Mayo. The record, like going back so far, it's like, was it the 50s or something was the last time they won one, and they've been to so many, and some finals obviously they've been well beat, and others they were quite unlucky. But certainly for their perspective, it's they'll see this as an opportunity. So we will go to Ulster, and the match that I focused mostly on the weekend. I watched the full game and the good bit of analysis and all. Obviously, a personal interest in it, but it was Cavan finished 13 points, Antrim 9 points. Did you watch the game yourself?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So, what did you make of it?
Yeah, well, I thought that Antrim played very, very well. I think that there was a tendency to talk down maybe Antrim a bit, Gerry. I don't mean that, but I don't think Antrim get enough respect, to be honest with you. And now, having said that, I looked at the Antrim team, and the Antrim team has some very, very good players. And Antrim actually, players-wise, are not bad at all. That's why I couldn't understand why people were kind of saying Cavan have to win this game easily. That kind of way. It was kind of seen as a gimme match. Now, to be honest with you, Gerry, I suppose I did a bit of research after. Now, the reason Antrim don't get respect is because they probably haven't done anything to earn it. They're in Division 4 for the last 3 years now, and their record in the Ulster Championship has been terrible in recent years. They won a game in 2014 against Fermanagh, and that was the only match they've won in the last 11 years. And I think before even that campaign in 2009, they won 2 games. But before that, you'd have to go back to 2003 for a game to win. And their qualifier record, Gerry, is not great either. So I think Antrim, while they don't get enough respect, they probably haven't done enough to earn it. But I would have been very, very surprised if Cavan had rolled over that game. I said it on the show last week. I think Antrim, and I think that Cavan, I think Mickey Graham is a very, very decent man, very good football man, and he definitely is true. He was absolutely no way he was paying Antrim any disrespect at the weekend. Mickey Graham absolutely had Antrim respected, and he had the homework done. And I'd say he's absolutely delighted to get out of there with a 4-point win. And it's absolute rubbish, Gerry, people saying that Cavan didn't play well or Cavan are playing bad and all that. That kind of way. It was a real banana skin for Cavan. It was. I just think that if you said to Mickey Graham after they got relegated that you would have beaten Antrim or Monaghan in Clones, and you would have beaten Antrim and you'd be in an Ulster semi-final, he would have absolutely bitten your hand off. And I don't know, would you agree with that yourself, Gerry, as an Antrim man?
Well, at the end of the day, and what you say, the record hasn't been good, and ultimately respect comes from winning. The match itself, watching it from an Antrim perspective, obviously, you're going into these things because we've seen it so often. We don't have a good record and we lose these games. The first half I thought was very encouraging. But I posted on social media at halftime that just from watching the two teams, it did feel to me like Antrim in the first half were probably as good as it gets. and certainly, and taking their scores. I think up until the one we'll talk about in a wee second, but until the one where it dropped short and the Cavan ended up getting the free out. Until that point, I think Antrim had scored. I don't think they had any wide, every time they got forward, which wasn't a lot. And certainly the way Antrim were playing was they were very deep. They were playing very, very deep, and Cavan were the ones that were pressing high, and it was a hard slog for Antrim to get up the field. And whenever they did get up, they took their scores, which was good to see. From our perspective, Cavan had some bad wides as well, so it could have been tighter. But there was a point, obviously, as we said offline, it felt to me like it changed the game. Was whenever Antrim were leading by 2 just before the half, and there was a shot taken and it dropped just short. The keeper caught it but carried it across the line. The umpire pointed for a free out, but the referee says that it was or the umpire pointed for a 45, and the referee says there had been contact with the keeper and that it was a free out. So that potentially scored the 45. You're 3 points up going into the second half, and instead Cavan went up, scored, so there was a point in it. Another thing I don't think Antrim done well enough was whenever Cavan, I think during the game Cavan had 3 black cards, and I would say, I don't have the exact figures, but I would say in the points of the game whenever they had the black cards that Cavan outscored Antrim. So maybe there was a wee bit where whenever Antrim did open up, that left more gaps for Cavan, and they weren't able to perform and score. Whenever you're looking at it with a black card, thinking this is a chance. I thought Antrim were a wee bit negative in how they lined up, and again, maybe that is a case of if they had opened up, maybe they could have got hammered, and it was a case of trying to keep it tight and try to keep the score down. But there's certainly, in some of the forward positions, Antrim have some players that are capable of scoring, but it was just that there wasn't enough bodies up in there often enough, because they were basically playing the 2 up top and everybody else was in their own half, and there was too much space and too much work for the guys to do. But it goes down, hopefully Antrim, we didn't get promoted. We lost in the first round of the championship. Ultimately it's another year where it's not really progress. So it's disappointing, but you just hope that there's enough young players that come through and to learn from it and move on and hopefully win a game or 2 next season. And
just going back to that, Gerry, we're saying Antrim, okay, you get respect by winning games, but Derry, I think they've only won 1 game in Ulster since 2011, and Derry now, the tradition, obviously, there is the point there, and Derry have good players, but Antrim have good players. Armagh record in Ulster was very poor. Fermanagh hasn't been. I know they've gotten to Ulster finals, but I just don't know why Antrim don't get a small bit more respect. Maybe it's because the clubs haven't been doing well since maybe Gall's dominance ended in the Ulster Club Championship, but Cavan clubs haven't really been doing well in Ulster. I just don't understand why Antrim don't maybe get. They don't seem to get any credit, and I'm not saying that the other counties, okay, they probably have better records, but I don't know. There seems to be a tendency that if you're playing Antrim and you lose, you've done terrible. Antrim don't get enough credit. The last year, I thought Lenny Harpison had Antrim set up very, very well. I thought they had a clear game plan. The players knew the game plan. They kept possession well. Cavan had to work hard to turn over the ball. Antrim, they were up for the game, and it was in Cavan. It was in Breffni Park as well. It's a long drive from Antrim. It's a long drive from Belfast to Breffni Park, so I can only imagine how far it is from other parts of Antrim to Cavan. So I don't know. I just don't understand why Antrim don't why Antrim don't maybe have a bit more respect or credit there, Gerry. Because it's a hard one to call.
I genuinely think it does just come down to even the teams you mentioned, Armagh, obviously, you're a good bit on from it now, since they won the All-Ireland, and even further since Derry won it. But they do have that pedigree and that history, whereas pretty much everyone in my generation and your generation has never really seen Antrim doing anything really. There was the Ulster final, and even that came out of the blue. Nobody expected it. When they shocked Donegal, and then they beat Cavan, and everybody was kind of not Cavan will beat them, but I don't know. I genuinely I think ultimately the respect comes from winning, and why they don't win is what I don't know. There's there's some people like the Hearts of Belfast and out towards like Antrim and Ballymena, like Randallstown, all that there sort of directions, like Cargan and Craigan, all that, those teams. Like some of those guys live and breathe Gaelic football, and it's frustrating. Is it because nobody else in Ulster puts as much commitment into hurling as what I don't know, but it shouldn't be, but is it? I don't know.
I just thinking, Gerry, and actually going back in that, Antrim and hurling get absolutely unbelievable respect. It's nearly the complete contrast. They probably get more credit. Like the hurling record, they probably get more respect for hurling than the record might suggest. That's why I always say a county team is just the sum of everything else that's happening in the county. And like, I suppose Antrim, I think that's why I might be saying they might deserve more respect, because off the field, Antrim are actually very, very strong. And on the field at club level, like there is an interest there. There's participation. Okay, they probably haven't got the facilities with the stadium in Cavan, but I think maybe Antrim have potential to be very, very good. And I suppose maybe they don't show it on the pitch, but like Harbinson did a great job in God. I think he's the right man. He's a very, very straight talker. Brendan Crossan made a good point in the Irish News today, though, just that like realistically, no matter even if they won that match, it's a bad year for Antrim because they're still stuck in Division 4, which is like, and I think that needs to change. They need to be in Division 3, but potentially Division 2. But I think Liam Bradley, when he was in there, I was reading into him at the weekend, he really did a great job. They got to the Ulster final, and I think they bet Galway in the qualifiers. I think they were actually in Division 2 at one stage, Antrim. And I think when Baker Bradley was in charge, Antrim actually, what we're saying with the off-field stuff, I think Antrim actually kind of, it was the one time when everything kind of went together for Antrim was when they kind of had, when Bradley was in charge. And he said that I think he kind of was appointed, if he had gotten the Derry job at some stage, they wouldn't still be waiting for an Ulster title. And it might be hard to disagree with that, Gerry, to be honest. I think Liam Bradley is a very good coach, but I think that's probably where is maybe the problem is that there is maybe, I think that's why I don't like them maybe not getting the respect, because I see myself the interest in Belfast and maybe talent that is there as well. I think that's why I don't like maybe seeing the lack of respect, to be honest with you. But look, I suppose it is what it is, and as you said, the way to earn respect is to start probably winning matches, like, isn't it, really?
Yeah. Well, there was another game up in Ulster, and this one was on Sunday for Mana and Down. Again, probably going into the match, Down would probably have been expected to win it, and they did win 115 to 11 points, which obviously means they sets up the semi-final with Cavan. So, what do you make of Down's victory?
Yeah, I actually watched the last half an hour as I flicked over from the Mayoras Common match when that match was over, and I watched the match in Down. But to be honest with you, I probably flicked over, Gerry, just at the wrong time, because Caelan Mooney got the goal and the game was really over then. But to be honest with you, I put out on Twitter, Andy Waters, my friend there in the Irish News, he's a very good reporter, but he was doing the report on the match, and he tweeted that Ryan Jones wasn't playing for Fermanagh, and I think Sean Quigley aren't playing. So that's like, Jones has really been the linchpin of that Fermanagh team in recent years, and I put out that I couldn't see Down being beaten when Jones wasn't playing for Fermanagh. No, he did come on at some stage, but I just think that the standard of that. That's why, again, I think that Fermanagh, they didn't really, they do very, very well. Like, they haven't really got the same resources as other counties. It's a very, very small pick, and they really punch above their weight in the football. Really, they do. For a very small county, they're very, very proud. Huge tradition in Fermanagh, and they'll always compete. Fermanagh will never disgrace themselves. They'll never go down without a fight. Fermanagh, they'll always give it a game. They're a very, very proud Gaelic football county. But I did think, Gerry, that the Down squad on paper was an awful lot stronger than the Fermanagh team, to be honest with you. I just think Down actually are in a situation, and Down is actually, it's an interesting county in some ways, because the demographics have changed in Down an awful lot. They have, like, I suppose there's like, if you go to certain parts of Down, Gaelic football is a religion, and when I say that, it means it's all that matters. Like the likes of Kilcoo and Mayo Bridge and those places like that, and Byrne, I suppose. But like, now it's kind of the towns in Down are doing quite strong. If you look at, like, this year, Carryduff are in a Down Senior Football Championship final, and Carryduff is just Greater Belfast, really, to be honest. That kind of way. And I saw them play one night against Bryansford. I was up in Newry at the match, and they were absolutely fantastic. And they were not a GAA stronghold at all, and they've really pushed on. And you see, the new club in East Belfast is formed, are playing in Down as well. And now, obviously, they're only a new club, but they have potential to be a real powerhouse. And then I suppose Warren Point were in it. I think they were in a Down Senior final very, very recently, or very close to one, but they're kind of a new town. Well, and Bryansford there and Newcastle are a coming team as well. So the demographics in Down are changing. And Breda are another really strong club. Breda are another Belfast club. So I think that it's really, really important for clubs to get their population centres as the main hub, as the strongest seat. I think that's an absolutely essential part for any county, is to have where kids are living or to be the strongest areas. And I think Down, like we're saying with Antrim, off the field, Down seem to really have gotten their act together in that sense, that kind of way, Gerry. So I think when that happens, then that should lead to a very, very good county team. Now, Down got promoted without earning it as such since the lockdown, because they were promoted before a ball was kicked. But Down have a really nice fulcrum of players. It's absolutely vital for the county to be in Division 2. I'd almost say long term they won't be a million miles off being a Division 1 team, Gerry, to be honest. I think that Down, there's an awful lot of ingredients and an awful lot of potential in Down, and the team they have now is good. I think that Paddy Talley as a coach, he plays a very effective side of football. Talley, in the sense that it gets the results. And I think that the results for Down was very, very much getting to Division 2, and I think that they've absolutely achieved that. Now, they bet Fermanagh, so I think that while it was important for them to get to Division 2, I think it was also important for them to consolidate their progress by beating Fermanagh. They're going into the game against Cavan as favourites with the bookmakers, but I think, Gerry, at this stage, anything really is a bonus. They'd love to get to an Ulster final. If they get to an Ulster final, I think they'll have a chance of winning it, but I think at this stage it's been a very good season for Down, and I think that they'll be very, very pleased with how the game went yesterday. And they probably could have won by a small bit more. So I think absolutely a lot to be positive from a Down perspective.
Okay. So we'll go down in Leinster, and your boys were up against the Dubs on Saturday evening. 11 points for Westmeath and 22 for Dublin. So did you notice anything about the Dubs? Any chinks in their armour or anything? Or?
Well, Gerry, I was nitpicking a small bit. I just thought Dublin, they were hitting wides that they mightn't have hit last year, and it was very, very nitpicking now. And I just thought that might cost them in the latter stages. But then I saw the Mayo match, they were doing the same, and Kerry were doing the same, and Kerry are out now. And I just think that I thought at the start of the year it was very much a 2-horse race with Kerry and Dublin. Then I saw Donegal play, and I thought it was a 3-horse race. But now Kerry are gone, so how many horses are now? Are Mayo back in it now? There's 12 teams left now. All 12 of them can't win the All-Ireland, but a lot of them will really, really fancy their chances. I think, Gerry, with this format, I think this is the year where there could be a team with a chance for a surprise team to do well on a once-off game, But going back on the Dubs, I thought they were absolutely excellent on Saturday night, Gerry, to be honest. I thought that they really peaked, they really looked like a team. And I just love watching that team. And I think that it's just so does Dublin a disservice to say anything about money being responsible for success. I just think that is just such absolute. I think it's horse tripe, Gerry, to be honest. I just don't I don't buy it at all, because if you look at it on the pitch, those lads train absolutely ferocious Dublin lads, and they really do the simple things right on the pitch. They really work hard for each other. They take their scores when it's on. They support the runners. They made 32 tackles against Westmeath. They really track back. And I just think that I don't like them being attributed to money. I just think Dublin, okay, fair enough. The facilities were given maybe to clubs, and clubs have got good coaches in, and clubs are being run very well in Dublin. But that Dublin team on the pitch, that's nothing to do with money, with how they operate, Gerry, to be honest. That kind of way. And it's hard to know what to make it from a Westmeath perspective, because they lost by 31 points 3 years ago to Dublin. They lost by 15 points in 2016 in the Leinster final. They lost by 13 points in 2015, and they've lost by 11 points now. So I suppose you could say they're making progress, but this game, I think, Gerry, was over when Dublin went 4-0 up in the first 3 or 4 minutes. This game was over. So in those other games, they were in the 2 Leinster finals, especially Westmeath were well in the game at half time. In 2017, they lost by 31 points, but they were still in the game after 11 minutes with level. So I think that while it might have been closer on the scoreboard, I don't think it was any closer from a chance of winning the match. I always say that's the vibe to go on, is winning the match. You could say Cork played Dublin last year, lost by 13 points, but with 20 minutes left, they were still winning the game. So I wouldn't say Westmeath were closer to winning the Cork last year. I think Westmeath, they showed a bit of spirit to keep going towards the end and not give in, but I suppose you'd expect that. Look, realistically, they were never really in the game, Gerry. They weren't Westmeath. I think Dublin, it was just a bit of a golfing class, and it kind of shone through on the day. But I think Dublin, I have absolutely no worries about them, and I think at the moment they're very, very much foreigners for 6 in a row. And like I think Meath are doing well in Leinster. We'll touch on that game in a second, but I definitely fancy Dublin now. But I just love the way, like, I suppose they've been so brainwashed into this thinking it's all about one game at a time. But actually, no, brainwash isn't the right term. They've been so correctly taught to focus on the next opposite and focus on doing everything right in training. Like they just seem to, when the championship comes around, I just thought they were class, Jerry. They remind me so much of the old Kilkenny team in that they never ever take a team for granted. They go out and they actually play hurling, or they play football. Kilkenny used to play hurling, but they go out and they play. They really don't. They don't let a team out with it. They never ever like really like they've all. That's why they. People think, oh, the money for everything is the reason that they're hammering these teams. I just think it's because they're just so disciplined and so focused, and they just don't. I think if a team starts letting up and believing their own hype, that's when a team starts being vulnerable and could be caught. But no, I just thought Dublin Championship the last day, they really were so well tuned. They were just so focused. They worked so hard for each other, and I was really, really impressed from a Dublin perspective, to be honest with you, Jerry.
Okay, and obviously that was a quarter final, so there was plenty of football in Leinster at the weekend. So the winners of Longford and Laois were scheduled in to play Dublin in the semi-final, and in that one, Laois came through 116 to 114. Probably on paper, it was the closest looking match in this weekend, and the scoreline showed that as well. So, did you see anything in Laois that signs of encouragement for them going forward?
Well, there's two things I want to say about Laois, Jerry. But firstly, I didn't see any of that game yesterday, only on the highlights on the Sunday game. But I've seen Laois 4 or 5 times this year, and to be honest with you, I haven't been impressed with them at all, Jerry. But on the other hand, I think they've had an absolutely brilliant year. Like, as stupid as that sounds, because they stayed up in Division 2 with 7 points, so they deserve to stay up in Division 2. And they're after beating Longford away in Pearse Park, where Longford have a very good record. So I think it's been a brilliant year for Laois. Now, when I saw them, they weren't good, but I suppose they've had good games and had bad games. Like it's funny, they got 2 goals in the last 2 kicks of the game against Roscommon and got a draw, or very close to the last 2 kicks of the game. A draw in the Hyde Park. Roscommon, I think they won nearly every other match apart from the next one. But Roscommon, that was no, like, get a result in the Hyde. They betted a good Armagh team playing very good football, Laois. I saw them against Westmeath and they were very poor, but they went down and won in Ennis against Clare, and they scored 3 goals late on. They just scored 3-3 in the last 5 minutes with a man down, an ambush for Mana the last day. So that was and then thereafter I think they scored loads and loads of points in a row yesterday to snatch the win out with the bag. So I think Laois, they came up from they were in Division 4 in 2018, got promoted. They were in Division 3 in 2019, they got promoted. They were in Division 2 this year, they stayed up, which was absolutely crucial. And they're after winning in Pearse Park in Longford. So it's absolutely nothing more you can expect. You could want from a Laois perspective this year, Jerry. I think in the qualifiers now, if this was how the year was meant to pan out, if they had won that game and if they had lost to Dublin, which I expect them to do, they'd go into the qualifiers and they'd probably be sticky opponents for teams. But Mike Quirk's come in there. It's his first year in there. He's a very, very good Kerry footballer, but he's done a very good job. He has. There's no point saying otherwise, And I suppose, look, from what I've seen, Jerry, I don't think they're going to get anywhere near. They're going to beat Dublin. I'd be surprised if they give Dublin a very good game, Jerry. To be honest, I think Dublin should have far too much for them, but they're going in there with absolutely nothing to lose. And one more thing about Laois is that underage, they've had a few good teams in recent years, so I think it's probably important for those lads to be at Division 2, a good high standard. So I think Laois this year, they couldn't have asked for much more. And Longford to be disappointed, I suppose. They just about missed out on Division 3 promotion. Until round 5, they looked like they had a great chance, and then it didn't really work out for them against Down, and then didn't really do anything after the lockdown. They were very disappointing up in Celtic Park, and then they conceded against Cork. So, look, they got the win over Louth. It was a good win for them in the Leinster Championship. They would have liked to have won that game yesterday and had a crack at the Dubs maybe, but look, it wasn't to be. And look, Laois will be pleased to get the win, and I suppose they can go into the Dublin game this weekend with nothing to lose.
Okay, and so on further in the Leinster Championship, then there was quite a scoreline. There seems to be Wicklow games seem to be high scoring here. They obviously beat Antrim by scored 7 in the league, and they conceded 7 this week. Wicklow 7 points, Meath 7-14. That's, I don't even know what sport that scores from. But did you see any of it? Were Meath as good as that scoreline sounds, or were Wicklow bad, or like what happened?
Well, yeah, again, just relying on highlights and match reports, Jerry. But I think that it would be doing Meath a disservice to suggest that Wicklow, it was just down to Wicklow purely playing bad. I think Meath are actually going very, very much in the right direction, and I think that they're absolutely coming to making a lot of progress. I think Wicklow, I think there was a few soft goals went in, there was letting a few penalties late on, and look, Meath, look, it's hard to take anyway. I think Jordan Morrison there scored 3-4, was it? So like Meath really seemed to have found new players. I think that they struggled in the first two games in Division 1 of the league, but apart from that, they really, really competed well in Division 1. They didn't win a match. They got a draw the last match in, I think it was in Clones. It might have been.
Sorry, give me 2 seconds here. Apologies, somebody at the door being very sorry. Good professionalism from me.
Sorry, of course, Jerry, just back in a second. There was broadcast just interrupted here briefly. It's a great element though, the knockout championship, that we're seeing these brilliant games. Because if you look at Kerry and Cork, was like, it was just with the knockout element, it made what should have been a very, very, maybe not like, if that game there was a backdoor, it wouldn't have been as much. It probably wouldn't have been remembered at all. But I'm just saying, Jerry, there to the viewers, when you're going back to the knockout format, like that game yesterday, it will actually be remembered now because Cork knocked Kerry out with the championship. Like, even if that game, if there was qualifiers, just that, like, we've often had maybe not great Cork Kerry games in the noughties, then when both teams would have been close. And to be honest with you wouldn't even remember them because of the qualifiers. Like, there was always a second chance, and Kerry always did well in the back door. But this game yesterday will be remembered now because Kerry are eliminated.
I know I see them talking a lot about, I think there was one in the 80s, but just giving off from a professionalism. The door knocking, somebody delivering a parcel and literally opened the front door and shouted in. So apologies to anybody watching, but yeah, some crack. That'll be a wee complaint getting sent in.
I mean, Jerry, yeah, no, 7-14 is great scoring for me. And I was really, really impressed with them, I suppose, from reading the reports and the feedback. And they're playing Kildare now. So we're just such a Kildare an awfully game. That was a 5:30 yesterday. Kildare got a 4-point win there. People mightn't be too impressed from a Kildare perspective, even. But Offaly are a tough nugget. That John Maughan doesn't set out teams to lose, Jerry. He sets out teams to have a go. He has them very fit, very well prepared. And like last year, Offaly very, very nearly bet Meath and Navan in the first round. This year, it was the same against Kildare. So no, I think Kildare will be very, very pleased. And I'm actually really looking forward to that match this weekend, that Kildare and Meath game in the Leinster Championship. But Kildare, Neil Flynn, just fair play to Meath. His father's funeral was on the Saturday, I think, and he played the game and played really well for Kildare. So condolences to Neil and all the family there, all the Flynn family. But no, Kildare and Meath, I'd say that would be a very good semi-final. And I think that both teams this year, like the way the knockout format is, they did really relish chance, Jerry, at Dublin in the final and Leinster final. Now, they probably wouldn't win the game, but I think in the league, the way the league has gone, both sides didn't really have great league. They might have learned a lot in performances, but the league didn't really go out for either team. So getting to a Munster final is probably quite important for either of these teams, and or to a Leinster final even. And I just think that like there's no, like, that game should be really, really interesting this weekend.
Just on that Kildare game, I caught a fair wee bit of it, and going towards the end of the match, it was quite interesting. It felt like Offaly were coming with a real run, and I think they got it back to 1 point. And then just while we were talking about the scores from the Tipperary game, and there was two great scores. I think one of them was a sideline ball, and the other one was a mark, possibly from a way out on the other side. But there was two great scores right at the end of that, which just kind of put Kildare. I think it was 2 points and 3 points ahead, which were just from watching it, just very good plays. I think then that's everything for this weekend. It was obviously there was a lot of drama. What we'll do is we'll cut off this one, and then we'll cover the hurling. There wasn't a great deal of action in the hurling this weekend, so we'll just we'll just go over it briefly. But my thanks to Connor, and thanks to everybody watching. And as I say, we'll be back in a couple of minutes in to discuss what few hurling games there were. So thank you.